Welcome, everybody. Nice to see your faces. Just take a moment to settle in together. And if you want to, you can click on the view and click on gallery, and you can see all the faces here that want to be seen. Now, we record this. No one's going to see you in the recording unless you unmute later and speak. So if you have your camera on, you can still enjoy being like not documented after this. So I'm just going to check out the faces. See who's here. See a lot of new faces. Welcome. What I like to notice as we come in is just what it's like to attune to the virtual space and the difference between the virtual space and your space. So when you look at this screen, like notice what happens in your body. Maybe you lean forward, maybe your breath changes, maybe you feel constricted, maybe you feel open. So many different things can happen. And then play with like coming back a little. If you're forward, feel what it's like to come back and look beyond the screen for a moment. Like really notice, how do I experience the room around me and the space beyond the screen? What's that like in my body? And as you're doing that, you get closer to noticing, how do I experience my body? Right? What am I coming into this session with? What am I holding physically? Not even situations or thoughts yet, but just physically. Like, what do I hold? What's happening in my physical body? So just take a moment to feel that. It can be unusual, to be asked, what are you feeling in your body? People will say, like, how are you? But I'm asking you, like, how's your body right now? I'm just seeing what that's like. And as you sit with that, we're really looking for three different places, three different sensational categories. Constriction, it's like bracing or pressure or something unpleasant, even pain. Constriction. Expansion, which is like the easy places to be with, the places that are grounded. Maybe there's even pleasure or like a nice feeling there. And then there's numbness, like I can't really feel this place at all. Or I'm touching it, but I can't really tell what's going on there. Right? So there's this constriction, there's expansion, there's numbness. We're never totally one or the other. That's the interesting thing. So if you feel chronic pain or constriction somewhere in your body, you might think like, I'm constricted. The reality is, like, my throat might be constricted, but my legs aren't. So that's why I like to start these sessions off just by noticing these different places, like what parts are constricted, what parts aren't. There's much of you. Your body tells a very complex story. There's not just one state. So just presencing that for a good moment. I'm going to pause and let you feel that. And notice what it's like to be with multiple parts. Like, ooh, constricted shoulder, soft belly. What's it like to be with two different places? Just see how that feels, even to witness and notice that. These somatic drop-ins are just like what the title suggests, those of you that are new. They're entirely free. They're by donation only. At the end, we'll drop the donation link if you have anything to donate, but you're not required to. And I'm just here to really teach you in an hour different ways, methods, philosophies, really around finding safety in your body. Like, regardless of what's happening in your life, what has happened in your life, or what's going to happen, what parts of you are here to be with? What parts of you can you go into and access agency and a sense of power and really a safety? There's this idea that safety is an external environment. So I'm going to explain this a little bit differently. If you think about trauma, this word that we hear a lot and use a lot, trauma is not what happened to you. It's how your body responded to what happened to you. Okay, that's what trauma is. So it's a biological response that we're born with. It's really important that we're born with this trauma response. It's why we're all here. It's why we've all survived to this age that we are, whatever age we are here, right? Because things happened, threats occurred, injustices ensued, and the body had a reflexive way to get out of it or survive it. That's what a trauma response is. In a response, I call it the trauma response cycle. There's 3 steps that I like to teach it as to make it really easy to comprehend. Step 1 or stage 1 is the stimulus, what happened. Stage 2 is how my body responds to what happened, this trauma response. It's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, okay? Then stage 3 is regulation. Regulation means my body has now perceived the safety from the threat being gone. Stage 3 is what we don't tend to get to. Stage 3 is the place that we're just near, but the body can't quite get there. Not because you're actually unsafe right now, like if you think of where you are in this moment in the room you're in, not in the world, but in the room you're in. You can look around with your eyes, you can like turn around, look all around you. You can see, like practically, visually, logistically, you're safe right now in this moment, right? In the room you're in. Yet, parts of your body have not caught up to that. Parts of your body are still bracing, right? Your mind might be working really fast. You might feel totally numb somewhere. Maybe you have like nausea and fear in your belly. There are parts of you that have yet to perceive that they are in the absence of threat right now. Now, that could go away in an hour. There could actually be threat in an hour. I don't know. Right now, can your body perceive that there isn't? Even pause and notice. Like, what parts of you, when you're in the room looking around, can actually feel the reality that there's no threat here? Just check. This gives you a great insight to your body, to what parts are present with your experience and what parts are still reverberating from past traumatic ones. Yeah, just feel into that. As you're doing that, you're getting a really good felt sense of what I'm saying with words. You're noticing, oh, I feel the chair. My shoulders are soft right now. Oh, I'm looking at a painting I love. And then you might also be noticing, I'm looking at a painting I love and all I feel is anxiety in my stomach. I feel the chair and my shoulders are really tense. My jaw is clenching even though nothing's happening right now, right? This is why I'm saying safety is not external. Safety is an internal result from perceiving non-threat. That's really important to understand. Because if you're like me, I thought safety was external for a very long time. I thought it was in places, I thought it was in people, I thought it was in substances and behaviors and foods. And so I was constantly reaching out to try to find some sense of security. And the more I did that, the further I got from myself. And I got further away from my own agency and my own ability to touch into what feels good in me. Because I was so attuned to safety must be outside of me because inside feels like hell. So it must be out there. What I learned, which is, thank goddess I learned it, is what's in me, that's where all the safety is. It's my ability to perceive that right now I'm okay. For now, this is like a moment by moment practice. This isn't like a spiritual bypassing of like, I'm safe every day. Because I'm not. That's a lie. There are moments where I'm not safe and I want to have a trauma response when that happens. But I don't want to live in that trauma response. When there's moments of safety, when there's moments of joy, when there's great pleasure and opportunity, I don't want to be in a trauma response then. So this work and the way I teach it is really about honoring where the body is by becoming a witness to it instead of identifying with it, and learning how to move things through the body so it can update and say, right now I'm safe. And why do we want to do that? Because the biology of safety literally helps us repair our skin, helps us digest food. It helps us see and relate to what's in front of us without reacting. It helps us get in touch with our intuition instead of being driven by fear response. It literally changes your life to be able to feel safety. It changes your life. And then there's a confidence that emerges because you can go into situations that might be triggering or painful or frustrating. And you know you have capacity to move through them. You leave the situation, your body does its thing, you update, you feel safe again, instead of having to avoid people and spaces and situations. Avoidance is not a bad thing. It's a really loving thing when you can't handle a situation. Like, that's a responsible thing to do. And it's nice to know there's another way to build capacity so you don't have to avoid life, right? Because you will avoid life, understandably, if your nervous system is storing traumatic events. And that's because you go into the world and your body expects everything to be a new traumatic event. So no matter what's happening, you can't enjoy it. You can't open up to it. You can't trust it. And we deserve better than that. So what I'd like to do is open up with like 10 minutes of really brief check-ins around intentions. So not necessarily stories of your life or what you've been through. This isn't the place today to go there. We do that sometimes. But today I really want to hear intentions so I can shape what I want to teach, what I want to lead, what kind of exercises we should learn today. What you want to learn, what you're curious about, what you're feeling in your body right now, right? And really keep it short. Think like 30 seconds. Like I'm really here to learn how to better communicate with my body. I'm here to learn my relationship with food, whatever it is. There's two ways to share. You can click the raise hand button. So at the bottom, you'll see reactions. You can click raise hand and your little virtual hand will go up. That means when you share publicly, you will be recorded. So your camera should be off if you don't want to be seen. And if you're okay with being seen, leave it on. If you want to be completely anonymous, you can send Evan a DM. So you can click on chat and click on Evan. If you send it to me, I will not see it because there's too many people. But if you click on Evan's name, you can DM him, tell him your intention. He'll speak it for you anonymously. Okay. So let's begin our little 10-minute weaving to see who's here, what we want to presence, what's happening. And then I'm going to go into some work with all of us. And we're going to do some practices and learn some things together today. Go for it, Evan.
Sure. Erin, please come off mute.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I want to learn how to help my daughter feel safe when she feels triggered by me. She has physical tics with her Tourette syndrome and misophonia that are triggered by my voice and presence, and I want to learn either how to be more in my body or how to help her in some way to help diffuse that.
Thank you, Erin. I had Tourette's for a long time, so I can empathize with that.
Kim, please come off mute.
I want to learn how to recognize when I'm dissociating around eating and food and be more present in my body while I'm around food.
Love that. Thank you.
Anjana, please come off mute.
Hi. So I was diagnosed with psoriasis, and I came to know that my skin is trying to keep me safe. So I want to learn more on how I can really communicate with my skin and really instill the belief that I'm safe. And, like my skin is safe no matter what. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Thank you, my friend.
Bridget, please come off mute.
Thank you. I want to slow down and listen to myself. Mostly know how to deal with my trauma. I didn't really have an intention. I'm mainly here just to learn anything I can.
Thank you so much.
Allison, please come off mute.
I live with a traumatic nerve injury in my left hand, arm, and fingers that makes using those really painful. So like typing excruciatingly painful. And for me, it's learning how to allow feeling, because it's an all or nothing often. And accepting that like pain is part of being in the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Keller, please come off mute.
Thank you. I want to practice being with myself using newer, healthier tools in a time of transition.
Beautiful.
Alana, please come off mute.
Thank you. I would like to learn how to build my capacity for being in neutrality and not swinging between highs and lows.
Beautiful. We'll do a practice today called pendulation. It's going to help with that a lot.
Thank you.
Jesse, please come off mute.
Hey everyone. Talking to the person that has caused nervousness or trauma in the past, even though it's a completely different conversation moment, but in the same intense heart race and concept, just literally being in these moments, getting from the car to the door or the house to the car, Yeah, thanks.
You got it.
Sense, please come off mute.
Greetings, everyone. My intention is to deepen my presence through transitions, moving from one place to another, or one time to another, or one stage to another, and the kind of spinning that I can find myself in through that transition. So just to ground and be present, to move through transition smoothly and gracefully. Thank you.
Anna, please come off mute.
I am working with the body tension, overall body tension, and it's 24/7. So I'd like to know how to break that. I find that since I've been doing more embodied work and everything, the tension increased. I've been dealing with my traumas, my early problems and everything, but the realization of what went on is creating more body tension because I want to be in the body. So how do I work with that tension to stop it from increasing and start to, I do pendulating, I do titrating.
We'll definitely work with that today. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Evan, let's choose one more live person, then you can present some things in the chat.
Sure. Sabra, please come off mute.
Hi, I was diagnosed with functional neurologic disorder with extreme autonomic system dysfunction, including dysautonomia. And I'm also a practicing shaman and would love to deepen and broaden my understanding of trauma and how the body and the mind correlate with them, and further my understanding of ways to drop into my body and remain there.
Thank you.
It looks like we got a lot of messages in the chat, so I'll read a handful of them now.
Sounds good.
Learning the difference between being in freeze and being calm. Needing to learn to listen to my body about food. I often eat when I'm not hungry. I'm here to learn how to support myself after I do something really big. I want to come down lower and deeper. Feeling the now. My intention is to feel into my body in this moment. I'm really here to share how to be in better relationship with the messages my body is sharing with me and how to listen.
Let's pause on that one. That feels like the theme for me. You know, how to be in relationship with the messages my body is sharing. Let's just all notice that for a moment. Right? Because we want to get some awareness around that word message, as well as I often say the language of the body. Like, what is that? Right? For the body, language is not verbal, it's sensational. It's symptomatic. It's a gesture, it's a posture, it's a behavior, it's a movement. You know, verbal comes from the mind. Obviously, it comes through the body, but the body itself, its language is sensation. So all those feelings that move through us, the rashes, like my friend with the psoriasis, these things that emerge, that's how the body speaks. What's so important about that, and can be a really good starting point for us, is think about how these very natural ways that the body speaks to tell us something, whether it's like a warning, like, hey, look at this rash, there's something going on with your liver. That could be one way. Or a healthy expression of there's too much in my body, I have to create a rash to get rid of it. either way, these are really healthy expressions of the body. These expressions get medicalized really quickly, just the same way trauma gets pathologized really quickly. And once it becomes pathologized or medicalized, it enters this category of like deviating from the norm, right? So most of our issues aren't actually what our bodies are doing, it's that they deviate from the norm. And then we other ourselves or we become othered because of what our bodies are doing. So the first place of really learning how to listen to what your body's trying to tell you is to have a true non-dual practice of what the body is doing. That's easier said than done. It's like a cognitive thing. It takes a long time to get there. But I want to start orienting you toward that so we can understand what it even means to listen to the body. Why on earth would I want to listen to my body if I have decided that rashes are bad? How am I going to listen to my body? If I binge ate for like 15, 16 years, if that's bad, how am I ever going to listen to my body when it wants to binge? I'm not. Because the moment something about me is wrong or bad, I dissociate, right? And I heard a few people bring this up. Dissociation is like this gift that we get from being human, which means the body kind of does this thing where it separates from our ability to perceive, right? So our conscious mind can no longer perceive what the body's feeling. It's a pause. It's like a beautiful breath when you're just constantly dealing with overwhelm and stress. So dissociation has its place. Primitively speaking, it's attached to all the trauma responses, but especially freeze and collapse, which are like the play dead responses. Because the body goes into those responses when you are faced with a situation that the body believes you're going to die, or the mind believes you're going to die. Your body freezes, you shut off, and you dissociate. So you don't have to feel those like last moments. So it's quite benevolent, right? If we really understand the purpose of it. What makes dissociation so important for all of us is overwhelm can also create dissociation, especially when you have a traumatized nervous system. You don't need life threat. All you need is like a pile of clothing on the floor and bam, dissociating from your body. Because the sensation that comes up from looking at the pile of clothing is enough to split you from yourself, right? So if I am thinking that something my body does is wrong, that there's something wrong with me, that's such a painful experience. I'm sure everyone in here has lived with that experience, either long-term or short-term at some point. That's not a body I can associate with, right? If it's wrong and it's in me, how can I associate with that? It's terrifying. The rash is a constant reminder of something's wrong with me. So I'm going to dissociate from the rash. Maybe I dissociate with it with lotion that gets rid of it temporarily, like steroids. Maybe I just, put a shirt over it and I pretend it's not there. There's all these ways I can actually avoid it and physically stop feeling the rash on my arm by not feeling my arm anymore. So we lose the ability to perceive parts of ourselves because we see these parts as wrong or they've been said to be wrong. Okay, so what does it have to do with trauma? Trauma is as natural as the trees and the clouds and rain. Trauma is an energy that moves through your body to propel you out of harm's way or toward harm's way. If it's a fight response, to fight off the thing that's going to harm you. If it's a flight response, you run away from the thing that's going to harm you. If it's a fawn response, you charm and appease the thing that might harm you. And if it's a freeze or collapse, you play dead or you shut down to survive the thing that might harm you. So it's this mechanism that has zero to do with us. It affects us, but it has nothing to do with us. We all inherited it. We're built this way. Every mammal, everything on Earth with a nervous system is built this way to have a reflexive propellant strategy built into its body in case it comes against a life threat, right? The moment you pathologize that, you rip it from nature, you separate it from actually what makes us whole and perfect, and you put it into what makes us malformed, what makes us othered, what makes us defective. That's a trick. I'm not saying anyone did this consciously, but that's a really tricky thing to get into. When something that's your nature that you have no control over now is your defect, you're stuck. You're stuck being defective. You're stuck needing medication. You're stuck needing therapy for the rest of your life. I'm not saying any things are bad, by the way, but when you see this thing that's very natural as defective, it changes the way you see yourself and the world around you. So everything, when we say, I want to listen to my body, we have to really understand what that intention means. right? It means the thing that comes up inside of me, that unfurling electricity, that lightning storm of anxiety that hits my nervous system and my chest, shuts down my breathing. I can barely think. Can I listen to that? Like, that's a big ask, right? Can I sit there and let it live through me and unfurl and stretch its arms and yawn and cry and scream? And then it metabolizes, like when you watch waves that crest and then they finally break. They don't keep growing. They get really big and then they break. Do we ever get to that breaking point? We tend to avoid it. We start to feel it rising up. And then reflexively, this is not our fault again, reflexively, we move toward food. We move toward substances. We move toward work, relationships, televisions, pornography, sex, like you name it. We move towards something outside of us to find safety. This is called autoregulation. Okay. It's when you have like a soothing or a coping habit or mechanism. It's something that gives you a little break from this experience in your body, doesn't take it away, right? It didn't go anywhere. It's still in there, but it's a distraction. It's a soothing. It's temporary and it's excellent. Like, it's not bad to need to eat some cake when you're overwhelmed, or to get a hug, or to masturbate, or to like watch a movie for 3 hours. Like, you're not bad for doing that. That's just how your body tries to regulate itself when that storm starts brewing. Because when we want to listen to our bodies, unfortunately, we're not listening to all the things we're like, I love you. I love being here. I love my hair today. Like, those are easy. Those are easy to be with. The things that we have to actually build capacity to listen to is the terror, the reverberation of the past traumatic events that still live in our bones, the fear of what's coming up in the future, our judgments of other people and ourselves. Those are the things that live through us sensationally and symptomatically as well. Okay. So I want us to understand when we're talking about listening to the body, what we're actually talking about, it's not a cognitive, I'm listening for the words. It's a felt experience of I'm on a roller coaster ride with the adrenaline and the electricity inside of me. That's what listening to the body actually is. And I say that so we can like remove the kind of like marketing concepts like, oh, I listen to my body. It can be like brutal at first. It doesn't actually hurt you, but it feels like it's going to. And that's when you get to that point where you feel like you're going to actually die or pass out or shut down. That's when the body reflexively moves toward these autoregulators, something else that can temporarily soothe you. So I want to presence that so we can start realizing like the baby steps we have to take to really be able to listen to our bodies. And I like the term baby steps actually as a metaphor because it's a developmental, it's like a redeveloping of the nervous system. You are literally repairing and redeveloping how you experience life when you do this work. It is not just like, I released my trauma today, or I cut it off, or now I'm completed. That's all cognitive. It's like we shift the flow of the energy and the nerves when we do these kind of practices. You're redeveloping. How many of you developed in a culture or a family system where you were constantly every day invited to feel your body? I mean, really, like, ask yourself that and just feel into that. Where it wasn't conditional listening. It was like the pimple was just as important as the clear skin. Like, both belonged and had a purpose and were sophisticated. I've yet to meet anyone that has lived that way yet. As adults, we get there, but growing up, very rarely. So we really need to see this as a redeveloping, as a practice, right? Not a tactic, not like something we do for a couple days or a couple weeks, but like a lifelong practice, whether it's 5 minutes a day or 50 minutes a day. It really doesn't matter how much time you spend on it, actually. It's the consistency of it. So your nervous system can start repairing itself and kind of shifting its flow and how it responds. What we find is when we think of like resilience, what we find is a flexible nervous system, one that can show up and come up to a situation that's really overwhelming, and it bounces back, right? It doesn't break down. When you're walking around with stored trauma, what you're walking around with is stored adrenaline, bracing, inflammation, a very hyperactive nervous system. So like your neurotransmitters are literally firing off faster than usual. So your body's overworking. Traumatized bodies are not lazy or broken or defective. They're actually overworking. So when you feel that exhaustion, when you feel that lack of motivation, when you feel foggy, it's as if you're running a marathon for 10 hours without rest. Like that's what's happening in your body biologically. So to go back to this pathology, this is natural to experience hardship, pain, grief, injustice. This is part of being on the planet. Not that it's like I would like it that way. It's part of being here. The body's response to it, that trauma response, that is supposed to happen. The third thing, what's, I shouldn't say not supposed to happen, but the way the body is also designed is to release it, to say, oh, it's over now. Ah, I can stop making adrenaline. My brain can slow down. My nervous system slows down. My bracing, loosens. The body goes to a place of, I don't have to brace like this. Oh, I can be like this right now. It rests. Do it with me. Let's all feel our hands, like constrict them and pull our shoulders up, like really feel the bracing. This is how a lot of our bodies actually live internally, whether we notice it or not. And then just feel what it's like to just open that and just fall back, just to get a felt sense. And cognitively, I know you all get what I'm saying, but feel the difference. It's a huge difference. Even as you unfurl and release, you'll notice what parts are still constricted. That's that internal visceral constriction that you can't change. Your body is bracing against life itself, right? Because traumatic situations happen, your body had a trauma response, and those parts that are responding through bracing have never released their bracing. Because bracing for a body, as we talk about body language, means protection. When my shoulders go up, they're protecting me. When my fist clenched, they're getting ready to protect me, to fend something off. When my jaw is clenched, I'm bracing like I'm ready for impact. That's how our bodies are bracing against the world. Because when you have a past threat, you have an expected future threat. So your body, when we say traumatized, all that means is your body gets stuck in the state of defending itself via protecting and bracing, right? Some of you are in the state of fight more than others. Some of you in flight more than others, some of you in fawn, some of you in freeze. We all go through all of them, but some bodies will really stay more in one because that's the one that's most successful. Okay. So let's start with some body listening right now, just around constriction. Let's just presence one place in the body that's constricted. And like I said before, let's not think of it as a word or as like, verbiage or like language in the mind. Let's think of it as language in the body, like sensation, like vibration. Okay. So find the place that's constricted and just put your hand over it. Don't rub it, just put your hand over it. And the first thing I want you to notice is how this place responds to your hand. What happens? Do you yawn? Do you stretch? Does your breath change? Does the actual place right under your hand get softer? Does it get bigger? I'd like you to DM Evan just to say what happens when your hand touches this. We're not going any further than the step so far.
I yawned. Tears. Unfurrowed forehead. I feel relaxed. My whole body gets cold. Release. I feel cared for. Immediate yawning. Feeling comfort. Gets softer. Feels edges. Deep breath. It tightens up more. It is warm and loving, and I start to cry. My lower back softens.
Let's pause there. So this is an example of there's no right thing for the body to do. We're going to have a cognitive concept that like it should release. So a lot of you did. You heard that. Lots of releasing and then arriving to the safety or updating to the fact that you're not threatened because this hand is there. And some bodies noticed it got tighter. It got more scared. It got bigger. That's perfect. That's not what we want, but it's perfect. I'm going to explain why. When we first presence a place that's braced, without even having to know why it's braced, the history, nothing. Just we feel the sensation of bracing and we put our hand there. This is a moment of experiencing the witness and the sovereign body, two different things. Sovereign body is the animal body we inhabit. That sovereign body does so much that has zero to do with your conscious awareness. Growing your hair, repairing your skin, digesting food, making new cells, literally making new organs and repairing them by cell death and regeneration. There's this whole ecosystem that your body just does, has zero to do with you. And then there's the conscious witness. When I say, I love you, who's I? Where's I? You know, I feel pain in my chest. Who's I? There's this amazing spiritual experience of witnessing the body instead of identifying with the body or being stuck in the body. So when you all put your hand over the place, and you do it again, find the place that's constricted, put your hand over there. Maybe it's a new place or the same place. Put your hand over there. Notice what it's like to be the witnesser right now. Like your hand lets you feel the place. You feel how the place responds to you. That's not you responding to your hand. That's your body responding to your hand. There's a relationship happening right here between you and your body. That's gorgeous. And sometimes the relationship is the one we prefer. Like, oh, I feel so good. Like someone said, loving warmth. And other times it's the one we don't prefer. Like, oh my gosh, the anxiety is getting bigger. Now, why would it get bigger? If we think, cognitively, it should get better, I'm putting my hand there. It's finally being seen. And sometimes parts of us that are finally being seen are like, that's all I wanted, and they release. Other times being seen gives them the support to now unfurl. Think about when you're holding something in for years and you go to therapy or you meet someone you love or you're with a friend and you finally say the thing and this person's like there, like they can handle it, and you just break down crying. You never cried for years with this thing, but you speak it and it's witnessed and activation. That's what the body does sometimes. So when we're sitting with ourselves and we're holding ourselves and we start shaking, or we start feeling anxiety, or we feel like nausea, the first thing we think is, I'm doing it wrong. I'm broken. I'm never going to get better. But that actually is you getting better. That's actually your body releasing the stored trauma. It's like a package of lightning. And when you open up that package, like that lightning bolt sometimes has to grow and get really big until it metabolizes. I'm not saying that we always have the capacity for that to happen, but I want us to understand that that's not a bad thing. So then when you start doing this work, whether it's with your therapist or by yourself, you can notice, oh, right, my body's supposed to do that. It's supposed to do that sometimes. Instead of projecting onto it, oh, another thing that's wrong with me, or I'll never get better. And then that's a whole other thing you have to live with, is this idea there's, again, something wrong with the body. So let's come back to this practice. We're noticing where we're constricted again or braced, putting our hand there, seeing how it responds. And now we're going to move into some pendulation. So with our hand there, first, just a good 20, 30 seconds, I'm going to be quiet just to feel how it responds. Not how you want it to respond, how it responds. And that's part of being the witnesser, not trying to affect the change, but just be curious of what happens. Now I want you to keep your hand where it is. Simultaneously, I want you to scan your body with your mind for a place that isn't constricted. It doesn't have to feel amazing. It can, doesn't have to. Just has less bracing, less constriction in the place where your hand is. And if you're able to reach it with your other hand, go for it. If not, just reach it with your attention, your breath, maybe a pillow. And I want you to inhabit that place, like really, like as if it was a bathtub, just dip into it, breathe, like fall into that place for a moment. See what it's like to live in a different place in your body, a place that isn't as braced. Maybe it's even open. And this begins pendulation. We've identified two places in our bodies, one that's constricted, one that isn't, or less. So two differences live inside of us right now. We're going to go between the two. So on your breath, almost like a bridge, like your breath is building a bridge, you breathe to that place that was constricted and you sit in that for a couple seconds, not trying to change it, just sitting in it for a couple seconds. And with your breath, you breathe that place that's less constricted. You sit there for a couple seconds. Breathe again and go to the place that's constricted. And just sit there for a few seconds. Breathe back to that place that's less constricted. We're going to do each one more time, but sit in this other place for a couple of seconds. Now go back to that place that is or was constricted. Stay with that again. And any movement that wants to emerge while you're doing this is excellent. You don't have to move. Sometimes stillness is just as important. And then one more time down or over or up to that place that's less constricted, just resting in there for a couple seconds, releasing your hands and just presencing your body. Like, what's my body feel like having gone between those two? Just notice. If your eyes are closed, open them so you can take in the room a little bit. See, okay, what's it like to be here now? What's this place like? Is there any movement that wants to emerge? Do I want to stretch? Do I feel frozen? Like, what's my body doing with this information? And again, please go to the DMs and just write to Evan a brief description of what happened during that for you. I'm going to talk about it a bit and then he'll share what comes through so you can understand what that is and why we do that. What tends to happen with the body, again, on this theme of listening to it and the language of it, it sends really big signals like anxiety, chronic pain, panic, disgust, embarrassment, shame, all those things. Those signals are big. They're highly sensational. Like we just felt when we went to that place that was braced. Okay. What we tend to do is when we feel that big state, we identify as that state. So if there's a constriction in my shoulder, I might say, I'm constricted. I'm feeling tight. If there's a panic in my chest, I might say, I'm anxious. I have a panic attack right now. The totality of me is now completely labeled as this one place in my body. What pendulation does is it teaches us, oh, that's not true. My shoulder is braced. There's terror, there's panic, there's hatred. All that lives in my shoulder. And right over here on my right rib, total peace, total relaxation. It shows us that there's multiple states in our body, multiple somatic states and emotional states in our body at all times. Why is that important? Because when I'm feeling triggered, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I experience chronic pain, like someone shared earlier, there is a place in me that's also not. And that place gives resourcing to the other. When I pendulate between the two, an internal relationship occurs and the body actually starts self-regulating. For some of you, the self-regulation is immediate, like, oh, it feels so good. For others, you must go through activation first before you reach self-regulation. And that's when it feels uncomfortable at first, lots of crying, moaning, tension, blood pressure, all this stuff rising. And then it breaks and then you start regulating. I'm going to pause on that and just hear what some of the experiences were.
Yeah. Anxiety came up. I got sleepy. Line between constriction and release blurred. A sense of quickness. So relaxing, I might take a short nap.
Right.
My body wants me to stay very, very still. Anxiety and panic. Constriction still there, but overall the body feels more integrated and freer. Relieved because it's been a long time I haven't comforted these parts. Frozen as well. Constriction from my neck and forehead went into my open hips, and now they feel constricted. I do feel relief in my head.
Let's pause there. These are great. I love the one that's the line blurred. I want us to kind of hear that. Because one thing you'll gain over time, if you haven't right now, is the line blurs. I start to gain more of me. That area between the two spaces, like for me, it was my shoulder and my rib. The area between these two spaces, it becomes like a bridge. They start connecting. These like inner cultures start speaking and mixing with each other. And there's this like internal relationship that happens. There's a flow. So parts of my body aren't sequestered or shoved away from other parts. They get to be together. That's pretty powerful. So when we talk about being integrated or integration, that's what's happening. One place that's been isolated in its fear, now it belongs with a place that isn't isolated with its fear. That's gorgeous. So there's an internal like parts work happening somatically just through pendulation via sensation. Why that's so important to me, based on what Anna shared earlier, When we get more awareness and cognition and even image around our events, our traumatic events that happened, what meets those images and memories is high sensation. So the origin of our events and the understanding of our events and the ability to see them clearly doesn't make our bodies feel better. It validates our experience, it makes sense of things, and it creates tons of sensation and adrenal response and even secondary trauma responses. This practice, the way I'm teaching it to you, is non-contextual. I'm not asking you to think of something that happened. I'm asking you to look for where you're bracing, because where you're bracing is the result of something that happened. You don't have to know what happened for the bracing to change. Some of you experience the bracing completely melting. Others experience much more activation. Either way, something happened there. Something shifted, right? The beginning of a stored, the beginning of change, or let's say like transformation, started occurring in a stored place, a place that was once fixed, like bracing is fixed. Something started changing in your bracing. If I'm holding a ball of fire and I open my hand, that fire grows and then it dissipates, right? That's the activation. Maybe I'm holding a little ember and I open it and it goes out. Like, it depends on the potency of what's being stored, how you're going to react, how your body's going to respond as it opens. But I just want us to understand how like user friendly this is for our bodies, because we don't have to go into content. Content is one of the reasons we get re-traumatized and enter cycles of secondary stress responses in therapy. This is why you can be in therapy for decades, literally, and every week emerge with even more symptoms of PTSD. They don't go away because you're reliving it in your body as you're seeing the image in your mind and you're telling it to a therapist. Okay? I'm not putting down therapy. What I'm saying is, if we don't marry our body sensations with the story we're telling, the body is just getting terrified as cognitively we're telling the story. We want both to come together, if anything. And what I love about this work is you can do this by yourself without a therapist right away if you don't have the money for one or you don't have the access to one. If you just work with sensation, because you don't need the story and you don't need to be haunted by the story, you can just be with the sensation. So those of you that started to feel a softening happen, that's trauma resolve happening in real time. That doesn't mean you're never going to feel it again. It means right now, a place that was bracing against life has realized, I don't have to brace right now. That's that third stage I was talking about earlier. A part of your body enters regulation. It says, I'm here. I survived. I don't have to protect right now. That's what trauma resolution is. That's all it is. It's not making sense of what happened. It's not learning what happened. It's not spending hours working really hard cognitively or in your life. It's just supporting the bracing to realize it's safe right now. And some of you, like I said, will have a huge activation before it releases. And that's also important. And if your body does that a lot, and it's to the point where it's really hard for you to be with because it's super high sensation, please don't do this alone. Please find a therapist, find a group, find a coven, find somewhere you can go, a church, like somewhere where you can presence this work you're doing and have people, have bodies witness you and hold you. It's really, really important. I'm going to pause just so we can feel into this for a moment. I'm going to share maybe a minute of some resources that we have for you, and then I'm going to open up for like closing discussion. Like, what are we noticing? What questions are we having? What's coming up in our bodies? But first, I just want to pause. Let's just feel where all this is landing. Again, language of the body. Not what you think about what I'm saying. What do you feel right now? There's one thing from this session that really just like, yes, I feel that. What is it? And it might be from your own body. It might not be from my lips. Like, notice. Let's just presence and hold that for a moment. Now, I want to orient you to some of our resources if you want to do more of this work. And then I'm going to go into some open shares and questions, and then we'll close. You can see in the chat, Evan dropped in 3 different links. One is to the next 6-week course. That's in late October. I think the week before November starts. That's our next course. It's a 6-week live course with me and my team. There's all the information on my website. I'm not going to go into it now to save time, but that link is there if you want to go on the wait list. The wait list guarantees you a spot. The second one is the 3-week sexual trauma series I'm putting out. That starts on July 2nd. It's free. It's 3 weeks. It's essentially a course by email. I do these quarterly, and it's you'll get 6 emails, video practices, and like lectures that are written out. And it's all about sexual trauma and how to release some of that and restore your vitality around turn on, sexuality, arousal, pleasure, anything. Even if sex isn't your thing right now, just even body pleasure itself. And then the next link is the Somatic Drop-In donation. If you want to contribute to this, please fill it in there. We use this money to offer a lot of accessible programs that we're currently building right now called a self-led course. So people can do this work on their own time without us as a team, like waiting all year for when we do our live courses. We also, we have a library membership too that can be really amazing. If you go to my website, you'll see that there. There's no contract. You just pay $50 a month. You cancel whenever you want. And there's a bunch of resources. We update it weekly with live practices and replays and webinars. Let's go into some questions. I'm going to go into sharing questions you have, insights from what you experience. You can click the reactions and raise hand button. You can also DM Evan privately and ask the question. He's going to prioritize people that haven't shared yet. Leave your hand up if you have, and if there's time and it works out, we'll get to you.
Anna, please machen.
I wanted to make a comment on what you said about me having the cognitive therapy triggering me. Actually, I didn't feel anything on the body when I was doing the cognitive therapy. The bracing started when I started the somatic. And when I started to address the toxicity in my life that I had to deal with. So I had to go cognitive because I had to do boundaries. I had to say, why am I reacting like that to that person? So it is the story, but if I wouldn't have been aware of cognitively what was going on, I would have continued the patterns. And that's why now I'm aware that I have to go out of the story because I understand it. But I agree with you. Therapy can last 10 years, and I was in therapy for long, didn't go. But my bracing started when I did somatic, not the other way around.
So I'd be curious. I don't want to get into it right now because of time, but I would be curious if you'd write to me. Did the bracing start, or did the awareness of the bracing start with somatics? That's what I'm curious about. Because my experience was very similar to yours. I was doing cognitive therapy for a bunch of years, and my symptoms were getting worse. I still couldn't feel my body, but like I wasn't sleeping. I was having panic attacks, and they were getting more severe. And then when I did somatics, I was finally feeling what my body was holding from all these years of storytelling. So I tend to believe that when we go into the body, and this is from my own experience, we don't suddenly, now the constriction's there because I went somatic. It's like it was always there, and now I can feel it, which is really important because when we go into it somatically, we're feeling what's always been in our bones, sometimes for decades. That's really difficult. It's like a bedroom that you throw things in and close the door and never clean. And like 30 years later, you open the door, you're overwhelmed. You don't know where to start. So titration of slowly presencing sensation is one of the most powerful and easiest ways to do this work, like we did today. Instead of presencing the whole thing, just start with one place that's bracing, one place that's less or isn't. And then you have something to work with without the content, without the history and the somatic lineage of bracing. So write to us, Anna. I would like to hear more about that.
Adita, please come on.
So I had a question. This is with regards to what came up for me when I was actually doing this exercise, which is that I touched a place that was clenching, and then it sort of released, and it showed me the interconnections with tension in other parts of my body. And I was like, cool. But then after a little while of staying with it, it kind of told me the story of like why it was there. And then I wanted to kind of immediately jump in and try to rescue it and be like, we're never going to let that happen again. I'm just going to do that. Like it kind of went into this like cognitive process of trying to make sure that never happens again. But I have an inkling that that's not maybe the best way to resolve or honor that clenching.
Yeah.
What is the way to resolve the sort of narrative that comes up when I do listen to my body?
Excellent share. I'm so glad someone shared this, because one thing that will emerge from, like, one of the things I'm trained in is called the elements of SciBAM. It's an acronym. And so one of those things is image. I is image, which means when you go into sensation, image might appear. So in this case, it can be like image, memory, context, something came through about the actual event or situation that's being held in this bracing. That will happen sometimes. So even though we're going into it without context, sometimes the context or content can emerge from the sensation. What do we do when that happens? What you did, I thought, was very beautiful. That's almost like a self-parenting technique of kind of like, that's not going to happen again. I'm here for you. I think what you're intuiting when you're saying that's not the best, I wouldn't say that, but when you're saying like there must be a better way, I think you're noticing that it's cognitive, right? It's not as somatic. So what we want to do when we feel that, and this is my way, this isn't the way. What I like to do is, if I'm noticing like, oh my gosh, the little boy, like my 5-year-old experience is right there on my shoulder, and I see it, it comes very clear, and I'm right there again. I want to bring that to here. So instead of saying that won't happen again, like a future concept to this other place, I say what's happening here. So I want that shoulder, that tension, to feel the chair I'm on, to feel the ground, to look around, to see my body, to see this is a different era than even the event that happened. And that updates that part to where I am now, instead of like a promise about the future, which is not bad, but it's more like of a cognitive affirmation than that part actually being with right now. So I'm glad you asked that. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Thank you, my friend.
Deanne, please come off mute.
So like I was wondering, because a while ago, because I do have, some reproductive issues, and I was just having pain in my right ovary, and then I put my hand there and then I fell asleep right away. I'm just, that was strange. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that before. So I was just wondering what to make of that. And the other thing I was wondering too is like, when our body responds from a place of trauma, are we just supposed to just accept it and kind of be at one with it and just kind of coexist with the healing and the trauma at the same time? So I just have some thoughts. I've never done a somatic session like this before, so this is pretty new for me. And you can see I'm in the hospital now, and I'm in the hospital right now.
I do see that,
but I still decided to join. I have multiple sclerosis and I'm having a flare. So I saw this today in my Instagram, and I was like, this would be a great time to just get my mind off this stuff.
I'm so glad you're here with us. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. When you said you fell asleep, what happened when you woke up? What was the pain like? Like, what happened in that area?
The pain sensation had declined, and I mean, embarrassingly, I think there must have been some kind of buildup of gas there or whatever, but there was a pressure there, and then the pressure had just kind of smoothed out.
Beautiful. Okay, that helps me answer the question. Thank you, my friend. And this is why I love these. I love virtual things, because so many people can access it depending on where they are in their situations. That's awesome. So much you said that was really important. So the first thing is like falling asleep. What do I make of that? These nervous systems, again, they are so fickle, and these bodies are so sovereign. Like, they really have their own way of processing trauma. Like, when I say sovereign body, I really mean it. Like, they're deciding. Right? I'm inviting something, I'm offering something, the body's deciding. We see this when we're doing this practice. We look around the room and everything's fine, and the body's still bracing. It's deciding when it's ready to open up and feel safe. I can't make it. So in this case, it decided, for whatever reason, to take a pause. Now, sometimes sleeping can be dissociative. Sometimes it can be a collapse response from freeze, where like we just zone out. Usually when that's the case, you wake up with a huge amount of dissociation or numbness or tension. That's why I asked what it was like when you came back. In your case, it sounds like something processed, something the body paused, it took care of whatever was going on there. There was a release, and you woke up to feel like, oh, that pain has lessened. So I would say it's a beautiful thing. Even if you dissociated and you woke up tense, it's still a beautiful thing, in my opinion, because we're learning how to witness our body, which gets to your second question. Yes, my way that I teach this and practice this in my life is like, I want to be friends with the trauma response. I don't want to try to like get rid of it or other it or shame it. It comes in. I just want to get really good at witnessing it. Like, that's my job, not to fight it, witness it. So if I was you and I came to and I was suddenly disoriented and even more tense, I just want to witness that. Like, wow, my body shut down for a minute. I came back and now I'm even more activated. So your words coexist with the trauma is precisely what I teach and believe in, because it is, to me, it's a spirit. It's not even like a condition. It's something that moves through us. It's like a true, like godly divine energy that moves through us, just like creativity. It's the same thing. It's creative energy. Sometimes it turns into a play. Sometimes it turns into a music. Sometimes it turns into a desk someone whittles. Other times it turns into flight response. It's this thing that propels you to live. Should we not be like worshiping that on some level? I mean, that's a big thing that we are born with. So that's why the pathologizing of it is strange to me, because we make it wrong and defective when really it's part of our bones. And all of our indigenous ancestors had a relationship with the spirit. They had a way to dance, they had a shake, they had a movement, they had herbs, they had ways that they coexisted and related to these trauma responses, right? Because bodies know, and body-based peoples and cultures know how inherent it is to their survival. They give thanks to it instead of trying to get rid of it and dominate it because it's not convenient, right? So we have to start closing. Let's just pause there and feel where we are in our bodies, what we're noticing. I'll actually ask Evan if there's one thing from the chat you really like to presence. Go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to start closing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one question I thought would be important to share. Someone asks, if my body goes into bracing in the same location over and over, is it safe to let the activation occur again and again, or is that re-traumatizing?
That's a really good question to land on. If the activation is consistently happening without becoming regulation, the body's unable to resource. Now, this is why I taught everyone pendulation today and we practiced it. When you feel the activation of the shoulder, but then you know your hip is peaceful, let's say, or it's less activated, if that shoulder is suddenly getting really big, take a pause and go to that place that's less. Okay. That's like your breath, like coming up for air if you're swimming in a really deep ocean. So pendulating actually doesn't just sometimes self-regulate, it also helps you access places that are resources, places that are safe, places you have capacity to be with if you need a break from the activation. The second thing I would add to that is a pillow. Pillows are like magical beings. You grab a pillow, you put it over your belly, you hold it gently, maybe you put a little pressure, and you will feel that activation just doing this, coming down a little bit. Or if you're dissociated and you can't feel your body, you put that pillow there, you hold it, you start to feel. Sometimes you'll still feel dissociated. Sometimes your activation will get bigger because the pillow adds to your capacity. This is when a co-regulator or a human being is really important. Co-regulators can be plants, animals, spirits. In this case, we want a human being. We want someone that can witness us and help us have resourcing through that activation. Because yes, if you're just activated, and there's no regulation with the activation, you're going to get burnout. It's like becoming traumatized all over again. Okay. So let's pause, take one more moment just to presence our own wisdom, which I would love for you to send to Evan and he'll share it. I love closing on that. Just like what you're noticing in your body, what's coming up for you from the session that you're walking away with. Really let your body tell you. Maybe your mind tells you to see what comes up. Send it to Evan. We'll listen to a couple, then we'll do a little closing movement and we'll be done.
Hope. Self-compassion. There's freedom to coming home. Peaceful feeling. Wanting to practice more. I love thinking of trauma as lightning or spirit. Taking in the words and the message into my body. My body wants more regulation. Healing is possible from within. Witnessing the bracing feels like a hug I have been waiting for. Trust that I'm okay, quote, normal, as trauma responses are normal and natural. A big smile on my face and a peaceful sigh. Relief to accept my compulsive behavior can be loved, self-love. Relief I feel like I just went on a run and released pent-up energy. My body is a beautiful universe where all are welcome. Permission, relief, and insight.
I don't want to stop. Let's stop. It is so good. Let's just stop there because of time. And I just really respect you all for coming here. Those of you that never heard of this before and just dove in, like Trudy and some others. Those of you who have been with me for a while through the work I do, like I'm just very grateful for your presence. And I like to close with two things. One, just to take a moment to look at the screen again. Like click gallery mode if you can. Look at these faces that have been here with you through this. Like there's bodies here from all over the world, just connecting over this desire to be kinder to themselves. That's pretty incredible. And knowing when we get off this call, how all these bodies will disperse like little tuning forks, into the world, and how we affect the bodies around us, by how we're treating our own. That's a really, really beautiful gift we get to give. Right? Just noticing that. And then taking your hands, especially if you're looking in gallery mode, and putting them on the edge of your screen. And you'll get this beautiful visual of just touching all these people from all over the world. And just seeing how your body feels that. And really the reminder that we're not doing this alone. Like there's nothing wrong with you. All these bodies here have felt these things. Like we're all here with this, for this. Okay. And every month we do one of these. So you look on my website, you can come back, bring those hands like this and just feel yourself, giving yourself a nice hug as you see everyone else hugging and what that reflection feels like. And if you want to unmute, you're allowed to unmute and say goodbye or whatever you want to say as we leave. Otherwise, you can just hop off. Thank you all so much.